Hi, welcome to another WP Repair Shop. My name is Toby. I'm going to be doing 20 questions about WordPress. I've been a WordPress developer for 15 years full-time or so. Seen a lot, haven't seen everything, but we'll do our best here. Question number one, how can I improve my website's loading speed? I'm going to assume by loading speed you mean what Google thinks of your website's loading speed, because Google mentioned a few years back that your mobile website speed, according to Google's page speed metric, is the metric that matters. And since then, pretty much everybody says, hey, how am I doing on Google's metrics? So we're just going to use Google's metric. There are other metrics, and some of which might be better, actually, when it comes down to actually websites loading fast for humans. But we're going to focus on Google's page speed. If you just go to Google and type Google page speed, you'll find the website. You can type your URL, and it'll give you a score between 0 and 100. On the high end, I've seen some hundreds. I've seen 90s. I usually aim for 90s in there. I do help people with very slow sites, and I've run into some that are in single digits, like 4, 5 out of 100. So there are really slow sites. There's a lot of places you could start, but the Google page speed metric page will give you some ideas. A lot of people, I've found, a lot of websites have issues with the largest contentful paint, which is basically when you load it up on the phone, here's what displays first at the top. And so a lot of people, if you have a slideshow there with big images, it could really slow down that score. If you have even one big image in there, it could make that score really bad, and that could adversely impact the whole rest of the score. So usually if I was to say the most common thing that I start with when I think about Google page speed is to focus on largest contentful paint, which is really optimize that top little window for mobile. So for example, one of the things I do sometimes if they have a video loading back there, I might just load a black background or a white background on mobile only. So you can do that. You can say if it's mobile, only display a white color. If it's desktop, display the big page, because Google has said that the big page doesn't matter. So you can make that one as big as you want in theory and not impact your Google ranking. Now there might be other SEO things that come into play with giant images and whatnot, but generally you're focusing on mobile and start with the largest contentful paint and then move on to the next thing that Google tells you to move on to on their page speed. Question 2. What are the best practices for mobile optimization? Oh, this is interesting because it leads right from that question. First of all, load your website on your phone and see what it looks like. See if you notice anything weird, if they're like, this button is really big, or this looks out of place. Maybe this headline is huge for some reason. So I would start there when I'm thinking of optimizing for mobile. Load it on your phone. See what you notice. And then scroll down and click around on your site using your phone. And you'll find, if you find a lot of things, just document them and start working on those. Those are going to be the lowest hanging fruits. And then a lot of times people are referring to speed, but get those low hanging fruits first for you want humans to go there and go, this is a nice looking mobile site, even if it takes a little longer to load. So that's my initial recommendation. And then we can work on things like largest contentful paint and other speed things. Question 3. How important is having an SSL certificate for my website? If you're not if you're not selling anything, if you're not taking a credit card or submitting a form, it's not really important at all, unless you're doing a lot of logging in from a coffee shop. So really all the SSL does is it encrypts data between your browser and the internet. And so if you were going to send credit card info, you definitely want that encrypted. And if you run into a website that's taking your credit card and it's not encrypted, then run for the hills. Do not use it. But I've seen legitimate websites that usually they're some successful small business that doesn't really need their website to generate leads, and it'll say that the site is insecure. But if they're not if they have a form that doesn't get sensitive data, it's not a big deal. But anytime if you were collecting, let's say you're a developer or website owner and you were collecting something sensitive, it could be a file or social security number, something like that, you would definitely want an SSL certificate. Question 4, how can I improve my website's user experience? Have other people use it. Have old people use it. Have young people use it. Have people of different demographics. Just friends. I'm not talking about anything big, but have people use it, and people who've never been to your website maybe, and just have them click around and just listen to their feedback. Ask them, did you notice anything weird? Would you change anything? Because ultimately, user experience is human experience, and you just want to listen. And the more you listen to feedback, the better the user experience will be, provided you have good judgment about the feedback. I have run into cases where the feedback is not good feedback, and I've been asked to do some really dumb stuff, and so you might want to run your feedback by a couple people and get some opinions. Question 5, what are the essential elements of a good homepage? I get asked this quite often, like, hey, what's my website missing? And what should I do on my website? And my answer is usually the same. And it starts with a question back. I'm like, well, what do you need your website to do for you? How is your business? Is it successful right now? Are you desperate for business? Do you need more leads? Do you need a lot of leads ongoing, or do you just need one lead a year? So all these questions play into, what is a good website, and, specifically a homepage. And then there's SEO questions. Once you nail that, let's say you're like, well, I just need like 10 leads a year. I close 10 deals. I'm a freelancer, and 10's great. And then you don't need that much actually in that case, probably. I always think, like, in a case like that, we're just taking that as an example, like you're a freelancer and you do a specific type of work, or maybe a consultant who does a specific type of work. You want to, I guess the thing that goes into every homepage that I would recommend is make sure you get over a certain barrier of trust for whatever your industry is and whatever you're trying to sell or communicate. So I find almost like less is more. Like, you don't need to have all your portfolio and stuff on there, but it needs to look professional according to what people expect for your field. Like, for a web developer, the bar might be a little higher for design, but like a law firm, especially if you're like 100-year-old law firm, you can probably have a really bad website, bad in the sense like looks like it was built 10 years ago or whatever. And you're probably doing fine because you probably don't need leads from your website. It's kind of there maybe just for contact info and a payment link. Whereas if you're a consultant and you need to continually churn new business, maybe you're working on a project basis, you need to make sure it's up to the words you're using are current words, and the pictures are showing, and that the website looks like you've updated it relatively recently. So I don't overthink it. I mainly ask questions. What are you trying to do? What does it need to do for you? And let's start there. Question 6. How can I use analytics to track my website's performance? Google Analytics is far and away the leader in tracking visits and like where people are going and that sort of thing. And Google Analytics has lots of ways to add it to your website. You can use Google Tag Manager. If you have a WordPress website, just use Google Sitekit. They make it so easy. You don't even need to have a Google Analytics account to start with Sitekit. So install Sitekit, and you will click a few buttons, log into your Google account. It'll walk you through it, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of SEO and Google Analytics tools running on your site. So that's one of the advantages of WordPress plus that plugin. But the question is one step further. How can I use analytics to track performance? Let's start with the main thing. This is like, I would imagine most analytics people would argue this if they're being honest, and they would say the number of visits doesn't matter. So Google Analytics will say, hey, you had 1,000 visits this month, congratulations, or 1,000,000 visits, congratulations. But I'm here to tell you that number matters like zero. It matters a little bit, but only in the context of conversions. And by conversions, I mean at the end of the chain, it's like, how many sales did you get? Is the business healthy? But Let's say your business is pretty healthy and you're getting enough website leads, like people are filling out the form. Then the metrics don't really matter. But like, let's say you're trying to improve, you're trying to go from 10 form submissions per month to 20. You can do that in a couple of ways. One is you can acquire more traffic. You could just double your traffic, and in theory, that would double your leads. If you double the same amount of traffic, you're going to go from 10 to, let's say it takes 1 million visits to get 10 submissions. You just get 2 million visits and get those in any way you can think of, social media, whatever, pay for it. But let's say you wanted to optimize the conversions, and this is usually what I recommend because it's more sustainable and it's going to lead to less admin overhead for your business. But the idea is you have 1 million visits. Let's go with a reasonable number. Let's say you have 10,000 visits per year, and you get 100 form submissions a year. You could get 20,000 visits and get 200 form submissions and close twice as much business. But let's say we wanted to, rather than acquiring all that extra traffic and doing that business and work, we're going to try to double from 10 leads a year to 20. And so you can look at your pages and go, like, is the form in a place that makes sense? Why would someone want to fill out this form? When they land here, is it the content they need to see to get them to fill out the form? So a lot of people will do like, I don't know, let's say I'm a consultant and I'm selling Google ad services, or let's say SEO. This is a big one for SEO people, but you might land on their SEO page and immediately they're like, hey, let us give you a free analysis of your current SEO state. Totally free. All we need is your email address and your name. Submit. We'll give you the report. That's an example of a conversion in this that we're going to count. And so the question would be, are these the right words here to help make that person, convince the person to fill out the form, hit submit? Is the submit button colorful enough? Maybe it needs to be pink instead of gray. Is the text even readable? Is it accessible to people with screen readers or older people who make their screens bigger, people with eyesight problems? And so these are all questions you can ask on the conversion end. And that's, to me, is better money spent rather than acquiring another, doubling your visitors. I try to focus on what people are doing on the page. There are lots of tools too that can help you get here. There's like Hotjar and all these other tools that, like, you can actually view video recordings of where people are clicking, where they're looking, and that sort of stuff. And that can be really helpful. But it's hard to process all that data. So conversions are almost, well, it's all hard work, but the conversions might be harder than the other one. But I think if you think with a conversion mindset, you'll get a lot further for the dollar. Question 7. What are the most important SEO factors for a new website? For example, how often should I update my website's content? What are the common SEO mistakes to avoid on my website? You're going to get a lot of like good advice, a lot of bad advice, a lot of random advice, especially if you Google this sort of thing. I think in general, like with SEO, you want to pick a target. And by a target, I mean a keyword. So let's start with one keyword. And let's say you're someone who fixes guitars for a living and you want to get more people who need string replacements. And maybe that's like your entry-level service at $20, and then they come in and you upsell them. So focus on string replacement. So your website might be, ifixguitars.com, but on the homepage, or maybe the subtext, it's ifixguitars.com cheapest string repair in Minneapolis, or cheapest string replacement in Minneapolis. So you might focus on cheap string replacement as your keyword. And a keyword is, I'm talking in terms of SEO, a keyword can be a phrase. And so you might then have a paragraph all about, or maybe a page about how you change strings and how your string changing is better or cheaper or more reliable than competitors, and why. And then you might also have additional services under that. But you want to pick a specific target, go for it, and then expand. That's just general advice. It's not going to apply to everything, but if you don't know where to start and you don't want to hire someone to do the research, I would say just think about it in that way. Question 8, how can I create effective call to action buttons? It's going to be different for everybody. I once went into helped an e-commerce company. They were doing a lot of business, and my question, I just looked at it and I said, you know what, this button where you bought the the add to cart button was not very, it didn't stand out. It looked really elegant amongst all the other stuff, but I was like, I want someone to click this button every time. And so what we did is we made it like bright pink, and we just made it stand out in a ridiculous way. And the objective there is then we tracked that. So we said, okay, we know what the conversion rate is up till today. We're going to make it pink for a week, and we're just going to see if it changes the conversion rate. And I think in that case, it made it go up a little bit. And so we just stuck with the bright, ugly pink button, but it converted, so in that case, that was a better call to action button. And I'm not saying it's the best. Maybe we could have put different text on it. So maybe rather than add to cart, we said, get the product or get the best deal now. And, whatever the text on the button, that could have helped convert even more. And maybe we did that test the next week and, kind of went from there and decided which one was the best we could think of. And, so that can be really fun work, but you need to have analytics to run those, and you need to have a certain volume of visitors to really help you. If you want actual data-driven decisions, you need, a certain baseline of visitors of quite a few, actually, thousands probably per week, just to make at least hundreds, just to make a good decision on that based on data. Question 9, what are the benefits of using a CMS like WordPress? Funny you ask. I've tried, I started out with Joomla. This would have been 20 years ago, I guess. I started out with Joomla, went to Drupal, went to WordPress. So these were the big 3 back in the day. There were other LMSs, and all these still exist as open source projects, but WordPress, for a variety of reasons, came out on top, and they now dominate the website building space. It's a very high percentage. I don't know. Let's say 6 out of 10 websites are WordPress. If 6 out of 10 websites built today are WordPress. There's great reasons for that, and some are just momentum. But when we look at the benefits of WordPress, it's probably good to look at the downsides of the others, and vice versa, because they all have pros and cons. But WordPress, being that it's by far the industry leader and it's open source, has huge advantages over any paid service like Wix, Squarespace, sites like that where you pay $30-$40 a month. Same with Shopify. You pay $30-$40 a month, and you get a certain set of tools, but you don't really have a lot of options outside of those tools. So the benefit of using WordPress is you get tons of options. Really, if you have a developer who knows what they're doing, unlimited options. Anything they could possibly do over there, you could do on your site if it's WordPress. So you have really zero limitations compared to the competitor, compared to Wix or Squarespace or Square.com. So just the advantage of WordPress is the breadth of options, because let's say you're hey, I need a web form. There's lots of web form options with WordPress and only one with Wix, you want to do SEO. With WordPress, you just click this button to install the software, and then you have all these great SEO options. Whereas with Wix and these other ones, they might give you some options, but you're going to be stuck with those options. Whereas with WordPress, you can be this plugin I'm using for SEO doesn't have this feature I need. And so you can just dump it and go with another plugin that does have that feature. You cannot do that on something like Squarespace or Wix. On the flip side, anytime you run a WordPress site, unless it's on WordPress.com, which is a whole confusing thing, and we can get into that later if you want, but let's say you're using the hosted version of WordPress, which is what pretty much everybody does. I should say the vast majority. You're going to have to pay for hosting. Just the very name hosted. You're going to have to, they call it self-hosted, but basically you're just going to have to pay. You're going to have to find and pay a host. And this is really easy, by the way. GoDaddy hosts millions of WordPress sites, DreamHost, Bluehost. You've heard of all these like hosting companies probably. So it's really easy to do, but you got to pay them a little bit every month. And your website's, unless you're like actively updating the software, the plugins and stuff, it's probably not as secure as Wix and Squarespace. So it's pros and cons. It can be secure. If you just click that update button every time you see it in WordPress, it's going to be probably more secure than Squarespace and Wix. But if you don't click that every time, probably less secure. So that's the main downside. But people say it's WordPress is cheaper and and it really isn't when it comes down to it. You got to pay for hosting, you got to pay security, you're probably buying some plugins. And so you might end up paying the same or more as you would per month for Wix or Squarespace. But obviously most people choose WordPress. There are great reasons to do that. So question number 10, how can I optimize website for local search? So this is a little bit drilling down on this SEO question. Local search to me implies geographic-based searches. So you're using your cell phone, you're in downtown Chicago, and you search for pizza. You're going to get 100 pizza joints, but they're all going to be close by. That's local. Or you're in Edina, Minnesota, and you're looking for a lawn care company. You search there, and you're going to find maybe 20 in the surrounding suburbs. And so that's local search. So first thing I recommend, if you meet the criteria, go to Google My Business, go to Google, type Google Business, and set up your Google Business account. In fact, you can do that regardless. There are two things. If you want to be in the map, which is, to me, the golden place to be, you need to be in the map. Figure out a way to get in the map, and you do that through Google Business. And you just fill out the Google Business stuff, and you hit submit, and you go. There's like a checkbox there that says, like, do you have a physical location? And if you're comfortable with your address, even if it's your home address, if you're comfortable sharing that as if it were a business address on the map, absolutely do it. If you're not comfortable for any reason, then don't do it, because it will start showing up your address. You'll have pictures of your house as your business. So some people I work with choose to do it the other way. But one cool thing is if you don't list that as your business address for Google Maps, you'll still be in the local results. So you can still tell Google, hey, I service like the Chicago metropolitan area. Maybe you service only the south side of Chicago. You can tell Google that sort of thing, and still be included in those local searches that appear below the AI, below the map. Now you're in the local organic search. Question 11, what is the best way to handle website maintenance? Let's define website maintenance. I think lots of people define it differently. At the simplest level, to me, website maintenance is you're clicking that update button in WordPress. It looks like a little recycle button. It's like up in the top left, wherever. You click it, you click all the things, you click update. That is website maintenance, really at a very basic level. And the problem with doing that is that sometimes you'll click that button to update and your whole site will disappear. It'll turn white and you'll have no idea how to get it back. Although I should say recently, like maybe a year or two ago, WordPress started, they added a feature that will send you an email saying, hey, your site's down. Click on this link in this email and maybe you can figure out how to get it back up. So that's actually a huge added feature, but you still might be stuck. So let's say you're going to pay somebody to do maintenance. Effectively, you want somebody who knows what they're doing, because you're going to end up with the white screen of death is what they call it, where your website's totally gone and it's just nothing. It's as if it didn't exist. I've seen cases where like I clicked update and all the plugins got deleted, and I still to this day I'm like, I don't know why they got deleted. So I had to revert to a backup. So to me, that brings up a point. With my maintenance, I back up the site files and database before I do any maintenance. So before I click recycle, make sure I have a solid backup. And you can do this. A lot of the shared hosting providers do this. Like I think pretty much any hosting provider that says they have like a managed WordPress, they probably offer backups, and you can pretty reliably rely on those. So let's say you have your backup. Great. Now go ahead and click the recycle button, see what happens. And if you destroy the site, just go back to your host and say, hey, revert me to yesterday's backup or whatever. So at a very basic level, that's maintenance. Now, the more experience you get, like, so me, I go in, I don't just do that. I go in and I kind of like click around on the admin. I'm like, what's this plugin? There's this new magnific pop-up maker plugin. Why do they have that? And I go into it. I'm like, they didn't create a single pop-up. And then I just like deactivate it or tell them. I tell them afterwards. I'm like, hey, I deactivated this plugin. You weren't using it, so there's no reason. It's just slowing down your site and making it less secure. And so I will also deactivate and delete, because without the deletion, there's still a risk there. But so one of the points of maintenance is to keep it speedy. One is to keep it secure. That's really it. Oh, and then features. So sometimes you'll update things and you get new features. Sometimes you'll update things, you get the new features, and then you have to like re-log into those services and stuff, like with an Instagram plugin or something. But at a base level, it's just update all the stuff. Now, I will actually go in, look at file systems just visually with my eyes. I'll scan it for viruses and malware and do stuff like that, just to make sure, like, just sometimes I'll find weird things that way, just doing a security scan using, I like to use WordFence, but you could use any security plugin and do a scan. So that's, at a high level, that's WordPress maintenance. Question 12, how can I create a blog that drives traffic to my website? Make it interesting, one. Write about something you care about. I think like if you care about it and you write about it, that's probably the most important thing, and that's probably the best you can do outside of hiring somebody who might or might not know what they're doing. And then you have to market it, because like even if you're in Google, there's probably a lot of competition for that, whatever you're writing about. So you need to market it. You need to go to your social media channels, like, hey, I published a blog. And not only that, you can't just say I published it. You have to like participate in these social media things. And I know it's a big headache, but you asked, how can I make a blog that drives traffic to my website? This is how. It's marketing. If you don't like marketing, then don't write a blog that drives traffic to your website. Try something else to drive sales and whatnot. Sorry. What are the best practices for website security? Update your plugins. That's the biggest thing you can do. And have a good backup system. So like I said, a lot of times GoDaddy and others managed WordPress hosting, they usually have a good backup system. So I shouldn't say good backup system. They usually have a backup system. If you're on your own, you can do I love Managed WP. They make great backups, and they have a whole interface for restoring and backing up. There are other backup plugins, lots of backup plugins. Backup Buddy is one of the old ones that's great. There's free ones, there's paid ones, but make a good backup. Store it somewhere that's not on your server, so you can access it if your server goes down or whatever. That's what I recommend at a base level. How can I integrate social media with my website? Let's be specific. Let's say we want to, a lot of customers of mine want to put like an Instagram feed or on their website, or a x.com feed or whatever. There are plugins for this, and for the most part, there's one called like Smash Balloon and a couple others, but for the most part, you just click through their like process, like, hey, I want to add a Facebook thing. I want to like display it like this. And usually it's pretty straightforward, and a developer could certainly help you, but you probably don't need a developer most of the time for that sort of thing. Question 15. What should I consider when choosing a web hosting provider? You should consider praying to God, because it's really hard to find good info about web hosts. Let's think of the big dogs. GoDaddy. They're slow. Everything about them is slow. Bluehost, so slow. I can't tell you. You're going to log in. No, this is how you're going to know. You're going to do Bluehost for 5 years and you're going to be like, okay, this is how fast a website is. And then you're going to go to some other host that does speed way better. And you're going to be like, oh, what? You can actually do this quickly? So I tell people like, you pay for different things, but and the host, by the way, maybe Bluehost was good 5 years ago and they're bad now and they're going to be good 5 years from now. These things like these, they change technology. All of a sudden they're good, then they're bad. So it's kind of the best way to find out is just to really do it. But you could ask around. I would ask your local WordPress group, for example, go onto their forum and just say, hey, what do you recommend for hosting? You'll get 100 different answers and they're all right and they're all wrong. And like everybody has opinions and everybody values different things differently. So like I really value admin speed because I'm always in the admin. And so I like web hosts that really invest in making the admin side of WordPress faster. Whereas maybe you don't care about admin speed because you're only in there once a year updating the copyright date or the minutes for your board meeting. So maybe you just want a fast front end, or maybe you just want cheap, and that's cool too. You know, GoDaddy and these Bluehosts, they have super cheap website or hosting plans. So also totally reasonable. If all you care about is the money, you just want it up. And so lots to think about there. But when all else fails, just go with one of the big dogs. My friend Matt likes Green Geeks because they're green. Like apparently they get all their power from solar power or something. Right now, and again, right now, I don't mean always. I'm not going to endorse them tomorrow maybe, but SiteGround is who I go with right now. And I'll put some of these links in the comments or whatever, not the comments, but in the description below. But so it's hard to it's hard to know for sure what you want. Maybe start with money and get the cheapest, see how that is, or start with SiteGround, or talk to Matt and start with the Green Geeks, or talk to Barbara and start with with WP Engine, whatever. They all have ups and downs and pros and cons. I'm running out of time here. I'm just going to do one more here. Question 16, how can I make my website ADA compliant? Oh, it's going to be a big one to end on. There's a plugin for Chrome. It's called Wave, W-A-V-E. I'll put a link in the description as well, but start there. You put it in Chrome, you load up your website, and you click the button. It'll tell you like how many errors you have, how many question mark, like how many contrast errors and actual errors, and that's probably the best place to start. And then once you kind of have that, you can get a sense for like how bad the problem is. Like maybe you have like a lot of contrast errors and a lot of regular errors, and then you can talk to a developer and say, hey, look, here's my stats according to Wave. Can you help? And it's not super easy all the time to fix for ADA compliance. And by the way, by ADA means Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's a lot of legal stuff going around right now about that. So people are very concerned about it. I would start there. Start with that simple report. You can also, there's like Accessibee and these other, they claim to do all-in-one accessibility stuff. I don't know how good they actually are. It's hard to get a straight answer out of people on the accessibility stuff. But this is my best assessment. I've written articles about accessibility. I've done accessibility work. I have talked to lots of accessibility pros, and there's a lot of accessibility pros who will give you bad information because their ass is on the line, because this is what they do for a living. And this is my opinion. I'm interpreting here, but like they'll say never use one of these. They call it a layover or something, but like never use Accessibee because they're not fixing anything, and who knows what issues they're creating. They actually say that it creates more issues, and maybe they're right. But I spoke with a person who's on the WordPress. He's really deep in the WordPress accessibility community, and actually leads one of the accessibility teams within WordPress. So. In fact, you can find an article on my website. I'll just say it. It's Joe Dolson, because he was quoted in this article on my website for this, and I'll post that below. But the gist of what he said, he's like, look, ideally you would fix all these issues like in the code, so they're fixed forever and you don't need to think about it. In lieu of that, these plugins like Accessibility are not, they might help, is what he says. Like, if you're doing nothing, maybe they help. And so I think that's probably the most fair advice, that if you can fix these issues, if you have the budget to fix them, because it's a one-time fix and it'll make everything better moving forward. If you can't, you can use Accessibility and it'll kind of like do it all kind of, and maybe it's going to be better, maybe not, but at least you're trying. And the other thing to do when you think of accessibility is to remove titles from images and add alt text to all your images. And WordPress has actually started to help by like, they'll make when you upload an image, it'll be like red and it'll say, hey, you should really add an alt tag here, an alt description. It's basically a description of the image. So let's say it was a picture of your daughter playing guitar, or no, let's say your daughter running through a field, jumping into the arms of her dad. You might say the alt text might be girl running in field, jumping into arms of man. It's like just general descriptions, so that somebody who can't see the image, and you can they can kind of understand what's going on in the image. The other thing you can do, wear a blindfold, turn on your accessibility feature on your computer. First, turn on the accessibility feature on your computer, wear a blindfold, and try to navigate your site. So basically you're doing it with your eyes closed. Hit the tab key, tab. It'll tell you what you're clicking on, and see if you can think to yourself, okay, I want to find the contact form in the footer, and see if you can find it with your eyes closed, basically. Or if you wanted to keep your eyes open, just keep hitting tab and see if you can get to all the stuff in the proper order. So long answer, that's a lot. ADA and accessibility is a big topic, and we should do a whole thing on accessibility probably, but hopefully that helps. So this is it. If you have questions, you can leave them in the comments here. You can, if you want to submit a question for a future podcast, you can submit that on my website. And that's all I got. So thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of the week here.